Hey guys, it's Pastor Kyle, and we're so glad that you have joined us for the last installment of Advent at Home. Now, the last couple of weeks, we've been preparing our hearts and minds to think about the coming of Christmas, the coming of God's Son, the coming of Jesus. And so 3-4 weeks ago, we started off by talking about the King is coming, how we went all the way back to the beginning of the Bible, how in Genesis chapter 3, we see that God promises that one day he's going to send his son, the King. And then we also talked about how the King is going to be born. We know that in Matthew chapter 1 and in Luke chapter 2. I mean, that's the whole purpose of Christmas. How him being born was completely different from any other king in history. And then last week, Pastor Campbell talked about how the King is worshiped. When the shepherds came and they worshiped, they knew that Jesus was not like any other human. He was not like any other baby. He was God incarnate. He was God with us. And so tonight we're talking about the King again. We're talking about the King of Kings. But I want you to help me think of what do you think of when you think about a king? All of this king talk and kings and kingship. What do you think about when it comes to a king? You know, I think about maybe just the name kings. You hear it like in sports teams. You might hear it in like movies or TV shows. Maybe you think about an actual kingdom. Like, what is that king in charge of? What do they rule over? Maybe you think about a king and the queen. That's possible, right? Well, I think the one thing I think about a lot is this, a crown. Now, my daughter made this in school today, but you think about a crown, right? Maybe through Christmas and thinking about the wise men, or maybe thinking about King Jesus. You think about this crown, or maybe you've made a crown before, but the crown represents the king, right? It represents the one who is in charge, who is rule, who is sovereign and control over all things. But you know, when there's a king, there's really only one person who can wear the crown. There's not a lot of different people who get to wear the crown except the king himself. And so tonight I want to read to you from Matthew chapter 2, and it talks about what happened right after Jesus was born. Maybe a year, maybe 2 years after Jesus was born, we pick this up, and you know this story about the visit of the wise men. And it says this: Now, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king. Now remember, now we're talking about King Jesus, but Matthew tells us here that there is a king that's already in charge of the area. In the days of Herod the king, behold, were wise men from the east, and they came to Jerusalem saying, where is he who has been born King of the Jews? So we got King Herod, and they know that this one is born who is called the King of the Jews. For we saw his star when it rose, and have come to worship him. Just like the shepherds now, these wise men were wanting to worship Jesus as well. When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Remember I said a minute ago that only one could wear the crown? Herod knew he didn't want anybody else wearing a crown except him. And so he thought, well, I'm going to have to do something about this. And it says this: and assembling all of the chief priests and the scribes of the people, he inquired of them, where is the Christ that he was to be born? So where is this king? And then he says this: they told him, in Bethlehem of Judea, for so it is written by the prophets. And you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who shall shepherd my people Israel. And this is what Herod the king did. Then Herod summoned the wise men secretly, and he ascertained from them what the time of the star had appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word that I too may worship him. Now, if you know the story, did King Herod really want to worship Jesus? Right. No, not at all. Instead, he had other plans. He said, after listening to the king, they went on their way, talking about the wise men, and behold, the star that they had seen when it rose went before them until it came to the rest over the place where the child was. And when they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. And going into the house where Jesus and Mary and Joseph were, they went and they fell down and they worshiped him. Then opening their treasures and offered their gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh, and being warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed to their own country by another way. We see King Herod here. We've been talking about the king of the Jews, and now we're talking about the King of Kings. Herod knew there was no one else who could wear this crown except him. He thought, I've got to do something to get rid of this child. And we know that that's what his plan was. But what we find out right there that happened at that very first Christmas is that nothing was going to change God's plan. Nothing was going to stop God's plan. He already had a plan for his son, who's going to be the King of Kings. Now think about all the kings that you've ever heard of. Maybe real, maybe fake, maybe that are now, maybe they're alive, maybe they're dead, just all the kings. And you lined them all up and you said, well, who is the best king? Who is the number one king of the kings? You know what we see in the Bible? We see in God's word that it's Jesus. That he is the King of Kings. He's the only one who can wear this crown. In Revelation chapter 9, it talks about that one day when Jesus comes back, when we wait for him to return, that he's going to come back and he will be known as the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. That he's the only one who can wear this crown now and forever. So our question this Christmas is, who's your king? Is Jesus the king of your life? Is Jesus the king of your heart? Is Jesus the king of your Christmas this year? That's our prayer for you. That's why we've done this Advent at Home, to help you think about Jesus as king. And tonight that we know that he is the King of Kings. Thank you guys for joining us. Hope you have a Merry Christmas.